Listen, I've been monitoring galactic communications for 3 centuries now, and let me tell you something. Nothing, and I mean nothing. It had prepared the Velkaran High Command for what showed up at our doorstep last Tuesday. Commander Thrix 9 was having his morning stimulant when the proximity alarm started screaming. The old fool nearly choked on his biopaste, which would have been hilarious if what followed hadn't been so terrifying. Report. Thrix barked, his 4 eyes swiveling frantically around the command center. Lieutenant Goros, bless his incompetent soul, was staring at his scanner with the expression of someone who just realized he'd been betting on the wrong species for the past 50 years. Sir, we have an unidentified vessel approaching the outer perimeter. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The Velkaran Empire hadn't seen an unidentified ship in decades. We'd crushed every neighboring civilization, absorbed their technologies, enslaved their populations. The galaxy was ours. Or so we thought. Classification? Thrix demanded, his mandibles clicking with irritation. Goros hesitated, and that hesitation should have been our first warning. Sir, it's unlike anything in our databases. The main view screen flickered to life, and there it was. A massive vessel, easily 3 kilometers long, drifting through space like a metallic ghost. Its hull was scarred, battle-worn, covered in patches and modifications that spoke of countless conflicts. But what made everyone in that command center go silent wasn't its size or its obvious age. It was the symbol painted on its side. Dim-clad. A simple design, a blue marble with green continents, set against a field of stars and stripes. By the 7 moons, whispered communications officer Velka, her voice barely audible. That's a Terran vessel. The bridge fell dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop in the vacuum of space. Now, let me explain something to you. Humanity, or Terra as they called their little mud ball, had been wiped out 67 years ago. The Velkaran Grand Fleet had reduced their homeworld to cosmic dust, scattered their colonies to the void, and hunted down every last human ship. It was supposed to be complete genocide, the final solution to what the High Command called the human problem. Humans, you see, had this annoying habit of refusing to surrender. Other species would roll over after losing a few battles, accept their new status as slaves or resources. Not humans. They fought tooth and nail for every star system, every asteroid, every floating piece of debris. They turned cargo ships into weapons, civilians into soldiers, and even their children into guerrilla fighters. The war lasted 37 years, and by the end of it, the Velkaran Empire had lost more ships and soldiers fighting these stubborn primates than in all our previous conquests combined. So when we finally cornered them, when their last few worlds burned, well, let's just say the High Command made sure there wouldn't be any survivors. Or so we thought. Hail them, Thrix ordered, though his voice had lost its earlier confidence. Velka's tentacles danced across her console. Channel open, sir. The view screen shifted, and suddenly we were staring at the bridge of the human vessel. And oh, what a sight it was. The human captain sat in his command chair like he owned the entire galaxy. Captain Marcus Kane, according to the identification that appeared on our screens, mid-50s by human standards, gray-haired, with eyes that had seen too much war and too much loss. His uniform was patched and faded, but he wore it with the kind of pride that made you want to salute him, even if you were his enemy. Velkaran vessel, Kane said, his voice calm and measured. This is Captain Marcus Kane of the U.S. Retribution. We need to talk. Thrix's mandibles clicked nervously. Captain Kane, I am Commander Thrix 9 of the Velkaran Imperial Navy. Your species was declared extinct 67 years ago. How are you still alive? Kane smiled, and that smile would haunt my nightmares for years to come. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a predator gives its prey right before the killing blow. Funny thing about humans, Commander, Kane said, leaning forward in his chair. We're remarkably hard to kill completely. You missed a few ships during your little genocide. We've been recuperating. Thrix laughed, But there was no humor in it. You're one ship against the entire Velkaran Empire. What could you possibly hope to accomplish? That's when Kane's smile grew wider. Oh, Commander. You seem to be under the impression that I'm here alone. The tactical officer, a young Velkaran named Zept, suddenly straightened in his chair. Sir. Multiple contacts appearing on long-range sensors. How many? Thrix demanded. Zep's voice cracked. 17, no, 23, sir. They're still appearing. The main view screen split, showing tactical displays of incoming vessels. Ship after ship materialized from hyperspace, each one bearing the same Terran insignia. They were a motley collection, converted freighters bristling with weapons, sleek destroyers that looked like they could outrun light itself, massive dreadnoughts that made our own battleships look like toys. But it was the largest ship that made everyone's blood run cold, a massive vessel, easily 5 kilometers long, emerged from hyperspace like a leviathan rising from the depths. Its hull was pristine black, adorned with golden inscriptions in human script, and it radiated power like a small star. Allow me to introduce the U.S. Vengeance, Kane said casually, as if he were discussing the weather. My flagship. She's been looking forward to this reunion for quite some time. Communications officer Velka was frantically working her console. Sir, I'm picking up transmissions from the human fleet. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Put it through, Thrix ordered, though he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. The bridge filled with the sound of human voices, dozens of them, speaking in perfect Velkaran. Intention Velkaran forces. This is Admiral Sarah Mitchell of the Terran Resistance Fleet. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to the laws of war. Laws of war? Thrix sputtered. You're terrorists. Pirates. Kane's expression darkened. No, Commander, we're survivors. There's a difference. For 67 years we've been hiding in the void, growing stronger, building ships, training soldiers, all for this moment. Metia, what do you want? Thrix asked, and I could hear the fear in his voice. Justice. Kane replied simply. You destroyed our homeworld, killed billions of innocent people, turned our children into ash and our dreams into nightmares. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? The tactical display showed more ships arriving, human vessels of every conceivable design. Some looked like they'd been built in asteroid shipyards. Others bore the sleek lines of pre-war Terran engineering. But all of them had one thing in common. They were armed to the teeth and ready for a fight. This is impossible, Thrix muttered. We destroyed your industrial capacity, your shipyards, your resource bases. You destroyed what you could find, Kane corrected. But humans are sneaky little creatures, Commander. We hit factories and asteroids, shipyards and gas giant rings, entire colonies in places you never thought to look. We've been preparing for this day since the last of our worlds burned. Lieutenant Goros was frantically scanning the human fleet. Sir, I'm reading weapons signatures unlike anything in our databases. Their energy outputs they're off the charts. Kane noticed the scanning attempts and chuckled. Curious about our toys, are you? 67 years is a long time, Commander. Long enough to develop some interesting new technologies. We learned a lot from studying the wreckage of your ships. You're bluffing, Thrix said. But his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Kane gestured to someone off-screen, fire a warning shot across their bow. Something gentle. One of the human destroyers, a sleek vessel designated U.S. Havoc, moved forward. A single beam of coherent energy lanced out, passing just in front of the Velkaran command ship. Where it passed, space itself seemed to ripple and distort. The effect on our sensors was immediate. Every instrument on the bridge went haywire. Alarms screaming warnings about exotic energy discharges and spatial distortions. What in the name of the void was that? Thrix whispered. Quantum lance technology, Kane explained conversationally. Tears holes in space-time itself. Quite effective against shields, hulls, and general concepts of existing. We have bigger ones if you'd like a demonstration. The bridge crew was starting to panic now. You could see it in their movements, hear it in their voices. These weren't battle-hardened veterans. These were administrators and bureaucrats who'd grown fat and lazy during decades of peace and prosperity. "You can't win," Thrix said desperately. "Even if you destroy this fleet, the Empire has thousands of ships, millions of soldiers." "Oh, we're not planning to fight the entire Empire," Kane said with that same terrifying smile. "That would take too long. And frankly, we have better things to do with our time." "Then what?" Kane's expression grew cold, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades of grief and rage. "We're going to do to you what you did to us, Commander. We're going to make you extinct." The tactical officer was practically hyperventilating now. "Sir, more contacts. They're appearing throughout the system." The strategic display lit up like a festival of lights. Human ships were materializing everywhere, around the system's gas giants, near the asteroid belts, even within the atmosphere of inhabited worlds. It wasn't an invasion. It was a perfectly coordinated operation that had been planned down to the last detail. "How?" Thrix asked weakly. 67 years of preparation," Kane replied. "We've been watching you, studying you, learning your patrol routes, your defensive positions, your weaknesses. We know where every ship is, where every base is hidden, where every politician sleeps at night." Communications Officer Velka looked up from her console, her face pale with terror. "Sir, I'm receiving reports from across the Empire. Human fleets have appeared in dozens of systems simultaneously. They're everywhere." Kane leaned back in his chair, looking satisfied. Phase 1 of Operation Lazarus is now complete. All Velkaran military assets have been neutralized or are currently under siege. "Phase 1? Thrix's voice was barely a whisper. "Oh yes, Commander. This is just the beginning. You see, we've had a lot of time to think about what we wanted to do to you. Simple revenge seemed insufficient. We wanted something more poetic." The main view screen shifted to show feeds from across the Velkaran Empire. Human ships hovering over major population centers, broadcasting surrender demands in perfect Velkaran. Orbital defense platforms being systematically destroyed by weapons that defied known physics. Entire fleets being disabled by some kind of energy field that left their crews alive but their ships powerless. "You're going to learn what it's like to be helpless," Kane continued, his voice growing colder with each word. "What it's like to watch your civilization crumble while being powerless to stop it. What it's like to lose everything you've ever cared about. You're monsters," Thrix whispered. Kane's laugh was bitter. "Monsters? No, Commander. Monsters are creatures who commit genocide for the sake of convenience. Monsters are beings who turn children into slaves and call it policy. We're not monsters. He stood up from his command chair, and the camera followed him as he walked to the view screen. "We're justice." The feed cut out, leaving the Velkaran bridge in stunned silence. Outside, the human fleet hung in space like a constellation of death, their weapons trained on every ship, every station, every possible escape route. Commander Thrix slumped in his chair, the weight of realization crushing down on him like a collapsed star. The Velkaran Empire, the mightiest military force in the galaxy, had been outmaneuvered by a species they thought they'd exterminated. But this was only the beginning of the nightmare. Because somewhere in the depths of space, more human ships were already moving toward their next targets, carrying weapons and technologies that would make the galaxy tremble. The dead had returned, and they had not forgotten. They had not forgiven. And they were just getting started. 3 days. That's how long it took for the humans to dismantle 6 centuries of Velkaran dominance. 3 days to reduce the mightiest empire in galactic history to a collection of isolated, terrified survivors huddling in whatever holes they could find. I was stationed on monitoring post Keth 7 when the second phase began. Our job was supposed to be simple: watch for pirates, smugglers, the occasional rebel cell that thought they could challenge imperial authority. Instead, we got front row seats to the systematic deconstruction of everything we thought we knew about warfare. Captain Kane's voice echoed across every communication channel in the Empire, broadcast on frequencies that should have been impossible to access. His message was simple, direct, and absolutely chilling. Citizens of the Velkaran Empire, This is Captain Marcus Kane of the Terran Resistance Fleet. Your government committed genocide. Your military murdered billions of innocent beings. Your leaders turned entire worlds into graveyards. Today, that ends. Station Commander Vex 12 was frantically trying to jam the transmission, his 8 arms dancing across multiple control panels simultaneously. Block that signal. Cut the feeds. I can't, sir. Technician Rold replied, sweat beading on his scaled forehead. They're using our own communication arrays against us. Every time I shut down one transmission, it pops up on 3 others. Kane's broadcast continued, as calm and measured as if he were reading the morning news. We're not here for conquest. We are not here for territory or resources. We are here for one purpose only: justice. Every Velkaran who participated in the genocide of humanity will face trial. Every commander who gave orders. Every soldier who pulled triggers. Every politician who signed death warrants. Vex 12's confidence was crumbling faster than a sandcastle in a tsunami. This is impossible. How are they maintaining such clear communications across the entire empire? Sir, Communications Officer Nex said quietly. I think they've taken control of the entire Imperial network. Not just jamming it or hacking it. They own it now. The implications hit everyone on the bridge like a physical blow. The Velkaran communication network was supposedly unhackable, protected by quantum encryption and isolated nodes. If the humans had compromised it completely, what else do they control? Vex 12 asked, though he looked like he didn't want to know the answer. His question was answered when every screen in the monitoring station switched to the same feed, the interior of what appeared to be a massive human command center. The room was enormous, filled with hundreds of workstations operated by humans of every age and description. At the center sat a woman who radiated authority like a star radiates heat. Admiral Sarah Mitchell looked exactly like what she was, a warrior who had spent decades planning the perfect war. Her uniform was immaculate, her silver hair pulled back in a practical bun, and her eyes held the kind of cold intelligence that had probably kept humanity alive when the rest of the galaxy wanted them dead. Velkaran forces, she said, her voice carrying across every speaker in the Empire. This is Admiral Mitchell. As of 17 minutes ago, we have assumed control of your banking systems, your power grids, your transportation networks, and your orbital traffic control. Your economy has been frozen. Your defensive satellites have been disabled, and your government databases have been reviewed. She paused, and that pause was more terrifying than any threat. We know everything. Every order given, every atrocity committed, every decision that led to the murder of 17 billion human beings. We have your records, your communications, your personal files. We know who you are, where you live, and what you've done. The bridge crew was staring at the screens in stunned horror. These weren't random attacks or lucky strikes. This was a complete takeover executed with surgical precision by people who had studied their enemy for decades. Impossible, Vex 12 muttered. Our security systems were designed by species you conquered 50 years ago, Admiral Mitchell continued, as if she'd heard him. Species whose survivors have been working with us, sharing their knowledge, helping us understand your weaknesses. Did you really think the families of your victims would forget? Did you imagine they would forgive? The screens shifted to show feeds from across the Empire. Velkaran officials being arrested in their homes by human soldiers who had somehow bypassed every security system ever built. Government buildings surrounded by ships that appeared out of nowhere. Military bases where the defenders found their weapons mysteriously offline and their communications dead. Phase 2 is now complete, Admiral Mitchell announced. All Velkaran government and military leadership have been detained. Trials will begin immediately. Trials? Technician Rold whispered. They're actually going to put us on trial? Oh, it gets better, Admiral Mitchell said, and somehow I got the feeling she was enjoying this. We've established temporary governing councils on every Velkaran world, staffed by representatives of the species you enslaved. The Tytherian Collective sends their regards, by the way. They're particularly interested in discussing reparations for the mining operations on their homeworld. Vex 12 had gone completely pale. The Tytherians had been one of the first species the Velkarans had conquered. Their crystalline cities turned into strip mines, their population reduced to slave labor. If they were involved in this, the Nexari Confederacy is also eager to renegotiate your little arrangement regarding their gas giant refineries, Admiral Mitchell continued conversationally. As are the Kelthan survivors, the Mordaxian resistance, and approximately 47 other species groups who have been waiting decades for this opportunity. The magnitude of what was happening began to sink in. This wasn't just humanity's revenge. This was every species the Velkaran Empire had ever wronged, working together under human coordination to settle old scores. How? Vex 12 asked the empty air. How did they coordinate this? How did they find all these survivors? The answer came from an unexpected source. One of the human ships had apparently been monitoring our communications, because a new voice joined the conversation. Simple, said a woman with a slight accent I couldn't place. We never stopped looking for survivors. Never stopped making contact. Never stopped building alliances. While you were celebrating your victories, we were collecting your victims. The screen showed a human woman in her 30s, standing on what appeared to be the bridge of a converted cargo vessel. Captain Lisa Torres, according to the identification display. She had the weathered look of someone who had spent years traveling through dangerous space. Meet the forgotten fleet. Captain Torres said with obvious pride. 67 years of search and rescue operations, finding survivors, evacuating refugees, building safe havens in places you never thought to look. Turns out there are a lot of empty systems out there. A lot of hiding places for people who don't want to be found. She gestured off screen, and the camera pulled back to show dozens of ships, each one different, each one representing a different conquered species. The galaxy is a big place, Commander Vex, bigger than your empire ever imagined, and we've been using every light year of it to prepare for this day. Vex 12 slumped in his command chair, finally understanding the scope of what they were facing. This wasn't a military operation. This was a revolution that had been brewing for decades, coordinated by the one species stubborn enough to never give up, never surrender, never accept defeat. What happens now? He asked quietly. Admiral Mitchell reappeared on the main screen. Now comes the interesting part. We're going to do something your empire never did. We're going to give you a choice. A choice? Mess. Every Velkaran citizen will be given the opportunity to renounce the empire's crimes, accept responsibility for their role in the genocide, and work toward making amends. Those who cooperate will be relocated to designated colony worlds where they can rebuild their society under the supervision of the Galactic Justice Council. And those who don't cooperate? Vex 12 asked, though he probably didn't want to know. Mitchell's smile was colder than deep space. Will be dealt with according to the laws of war as established by your own empire. The same laws you used to justify the extermination of entire species. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The Velkarans were going to be judged by their own standards, held accountable under the same brutal legal framework they had used to justify centuries of conquest and genocide. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally, Admiral Mitchell continued. After that, we begin forced relocations. I suggest you use the time wisely. The transmission ended, leaving the monitoring station in complete silence. Outside, space was filled with human ships, their weapons powered down but their message clear. Resistance was futile. Yes, sir. Communications officer next said quietly. I'm receiving surrender messages from across the Empire. Military commands, planetary governors, entire fleets. They're all giving up. Vex 12 nodded slowly. Contact Admiral Mitchell. Tell her we surrender. All of us, sir. All of us. As Nex sent the message, I found myself thinking about the bitter irony of it all. The Velkaran Empire had spent centuries proving that might makes right, that the strong could do whatever they wanted to the weak. They had justified genocide, slavery, and conquest with the simple argument that they had the power to enforce their will. Now they were learning what it felt like to be on the other side of that equation. The humans had returned from the dead, stronger and smarter and angrier than anyone had imagined possible. They had spent 67 years planning the perfect revenge, and they had executed it flawlessly. But the most terrifying part wasn't their military might or their technological superiority. It was their patience. They had waited decades for this moment, building alliances, gathering evidence, preparing their case with the methodical thoroughness of natural-born lawyers. They weren't just conquering the Velkaran Empire, they were prosecuting it. 6 months later, I found myself standing in a courtroom on New Geneva, the humans' new capital world. As a monitoring station commander, I was classified as low-level military personnel, which apparently meant I got to serve as a witness rather than a defendant. The trials were everything Admiral Mitchell had promised, thorough, fair, and absolutely terrifying in their precision. The humans had documented everything, cross-referenced every order, traced every chain of command back to its source. Commander Thrix 9 was sentenced to life imprisonment for his role in multiple civilian bombings. Admiral Kest Prime received execution for ordering the destruction of Terran refugee ships. Even bureaucrats who had simply processed deportation orders found themselves facing decades in prison. But perhaps the most chilling moment came during the testimony of a human survivor named David Park. He had been 7 years old when the Velkarans destroyed his colony world. He was now 74, and he had spent the intervening years documenting every atrocity, every war crime, every act of genocide committed by Imperial forces. "We never forgot," he said quietly, addressing the packed courtroom. "We never forgave. And we never stopped believing that someday, somehow, justice would be served." He looked directly at the dock where the Velkaran war criminals sat in chains. Today is that day. The humans had won the ultimate victory. They had proven that no matter how powerful, how ruthless, how seemingly unstoppable an empire might be, there were some things that could not be destroyed: memory, determination, and the unshakable belief that eventually, everyone has to answer for their crimes. The Velkaran Empire was finished, reduced to scattered colonies and bitter memories. But perhaps more importantly, the galaxy had learned a lesson that would echo through the ages. Humanity doesn't just survive. It remembers, it plans, it prepares, and when humanity finally strikes back, entire empires fall,